they were enslaved. They did two things. They installed a worship gene in the human genome. When this gene is turned...
But he's talking about the Anunnaki who created us humans from Neanderthal using their DNA. And he's saying that they also added a worship gene. Now, the problem with that is there was only 300 Igigi over in the Abzu, which is where the mining was, which is where they used us humans to mine. And there was only one main Anunnaki there, which was Enki. So for them to have a worship gene instead of actually just getting on with the work for their planet that's dying just seems absolutely logical, because the worship gene, there was only one god. It wasn't like there was all the other gods there, you know, Enlil and then Harsag and people like that. So the logic just isn't there. You know, they made us to mine, not to worship.
Word God in the Bible, for example, is mistranslated. There should be an S on the end of every word that says...
I have a problem with that. Although I do agree that there were gods and the word Elohim is plural, there were times that the Bible was actually writing about a single god. So you can't add the S on every single time that one god is talking about other gods and says that, you know, you should follow me or whatever because I'm a god and don't trust the other gods. You can't have don't follow gods, me, because of the other gods, plural. So you can't do that. So, for example, Yahweh, who was not Enlil, I've done some amazing research on that and proved that with evidence. If you want to see it, let me know. Yahweh at times would be referring to himself as God. So you can't have him saying gods when he's really just referring to himself. Now, he was one of the Anunnaki, but wasn't Enlil. So, although Billy's correct in terms that Elohim is plural, sometimes God is just one that they're referring to. Dragons were real, and if you have a listen to this, you'll find out that it was a comet.
A monstrous beast from the heavenly depths, Sutha. The celestial battle resulted in the creation of a monster that once belonged to Tiamat's host. It awakened from its slumber in the depths of the cosmos when Nibiru alarmed it. It extended from the horizon to the middle of heaven, like a blazing dragon with a head of 1 league, a body of 50 leagues, and a massive tail.
So basically, dragons were comets or anything with a tail in space. Now, so basically, this is the Chinese dragon, as you can probably now gather. That's where the Chinese dragons got it from. And what you just heard there was translations from the Liechtenstein collection of the Morhen tablets, Babylonian, which predate the Bible, obviously. So that was the original word for dragon. The Anunnaki were dark-skinned, and they created us, the first Homo sapiens. Now, have a listen to all the way to the very end. It's really important, otherwise you'll miss the whole point. So this is a tablet that's in the Liechtenstein. It ended up being in Columbia University, one of 14 that's owned by the Rothschilds. Ended up being translated by Morhen. Now, let's have a listen to the Anunnaki as they've just created the very first human or Homo sapien on Earth.
His hair on his head was jet black and tanned. His skin was as smooth as that of the Anunnaki. The soil of the Abzu was similar in hue to dark crimson blood.
Well, at least he's not got scowls like the Anunnaki. Hang on a minute, smooth. Okay. Now let's listen to what they say about the first female that they created.
Her eyes were healthy, and her ears were as well. Her arms and legs were well formed, with parts that looked like legs and parts that looked like hands. She didn't shake, and her hair was sandy. Ninmah held the young woman in her hands. She whacked her buttocks, and the baby made lovely sounds. Her skin was as immaculate and colourless as that of the Anunnaki.
As colourless as the Anunnaki. They were white. Otherwise, they would have said the same about the first boy. So the Anunnaki were pale-skinned, as we've always said. That's the evidence. Colourless. Whereas they did describe the first Homo sapien as red hue as the clay. So we have all the evidence we ever need. So basically, if you want to know, the first Homo sapien was dark-skinned, the second was pale, which was the female, and the Anunnaki were pale-skinned, blue eyes, blonde hair, which is why we have that same image of God. So please, no more saying, because I've asked for evidence that he's they're dark-skinned, and no one ever gives it to me. That rules it out now. That's the end of it. We've got the actual tablets. Thank you very much. What does it matter if the Anunnaki were pale skin or black skin? That's what I've been asked, and you've got to remember, people tell me that they're black. So some people seem to want them to be black, and I ask for evidence, they can't provide it, which is why I did in my previous video that they were pale skinned. Now, the Anunnaki created the first Homo sapiens in the Abzu. This is what they look like. See my previous video for the skin colour. These characters couldn't talk. They didn't have the vocabulary, and they wasn't hugely smart. It wasn't until the Anunnaki bred with those Homo sapiens which created the Homo sapiens sapiens, and they did that in, yes, guess where the Anunnaki was, exactly. Now, mainstream will give you stupid ideas like, oh, there was a deficiency in vitamin D, that's why there was white skin, but when you read tablets like this, which is the Adapa story, you'll realise that the Anunnaki bred with the darker skinned people, and that's why we end up in the Middle East with pale skin, and obviously their offspring were smarter. Now, they may have been white, olive, or dark skinned, but that's where we got Homo sapiens sapiens. Good news for my Patreon followers, or those that might want to be a Patreon follower. So up here on patreon.com/outrohistory, there's a button that says collections. I've now put all the videos in these collections, so you can see all the mermaids, and these are the long documentaries. These ain't the TikTok ones. These are the ones where you find out things that you'll never know and find out from anywhere else, because the way I research, and as you know, if you're watching this, you must know what I do, how good I am. In fact, the video that's about to be released, I release one every week, and the one that's just about to be released this week is who Yahweh was. I was the guy that worked out who Jesus is, and so on. Oh, so many things I've done. And this time I've actually worked out with evidence who Yahweh was. So I am really looking forward to that. And these are long videos, like I say. You know, there's Spirits one is 3 hours long, Bigfoot, all sorts of things. So yeah, Patreon.